Now, Don DeLanna Gay, Deanne, Carol Tune, Studi Kaywood. Hello and welcome.
Good morning. Thank you for joining us on this SAG-AFTRA live stream on YouTube. To stay informed about all of our live stream and video events, we invite you to subscribe to this channel. You can go ahead and do that right now, SAG-AFTRA on YouTube. Today, we present the President's Task Force on Education, Outreach, and Engagement live stream, Native American Storytellers, A Legacy and Future. We'll be pausing throughout as we have ASL interpreters Courtney Nimmersheim and Risa Rojas here with us today to translate into American Sign Language. Courtney and Risa will be switching off periodically throughout today's discussion. The presentation will begin momentarily. If you have questions now or throughout the broadcast that you'd like to direct to today's guests, please email pteoe@sagaftra.org. That's pteoe@sagaftra.org. As a reminder, today's program is being recorded and you can watch the replay right here on SAG-AFTRA's YouTube channel, along with more great content. Now, please give a warm welcome to today's host, SAG-AFTRA President, Gabrielle Carteris.
Thank you, Pamela. Thank you. Hi, everybody. Welcome. I hope you're all doing well, staying healthy and safe. I'm really actually very excited about today's topic, Native American Storytellers, A Legacy and Future. We're actually here to shine a light on crafting genuine and authentic stories of Native Americans. We're going to delve into some of the ways that Native actors and storytellers have been part of the fabric of the American scene since its inception, and actually look at how today's narrative has yet to be a true reflection of the culture in today's programming. Before we kick off, I want to actually extend a heartfelt thanks to our panelists and to DeLanna Studi, our moderator, and also to the SAG-AFTRA National Native Americans Committee and the SAG-AFTRA Equity and Inclusion Department. Thank you, everybody. I also want to say hello quickly to SAG-AFTRA, our SAG-AFTRA Executive Vice President, Rebecca Damon. Hello, Rebecca. Welcome.
Gabrielle.
Thank you. So last month, Deadline reported that members of WGA West Native American and Indigenous Writers Committee called on the industry to make amends for stereotypical portrayals and inadequate representation, calling on Hollywood to reject stereotypical portrayals of Native people and to hire Native writers, showrunners, directors, and actors to tell their stories, to tell their true stories. And according to the National Congress of American Indians, which is known as NCAI, there are actually 573 federally recognized Indian nations in the United States. And they said, and I'm quoting, they have some of the richest storied cultures in the planet. The NCAI has long held a clear position against derogatory and harmful stereotypes of Native people, including sports mascots, something we're hearing in the press a great deal, in media and in popular culture. We're finally seeing some consideration and thoughtful change, finally, happening as a result of years and years of organizing and campaign efforts like Change the Mascot. Earlier this year, Camel Rock Studios, the first movie facility owned by a Native American tribe in the history of Hollywood, which is stunning in itself, Camel Rock Studios opened its gates in New Mexico in an effort to actually target the rapidly increasing production of movies, television, and mobile entertainment platforms throughout the world. And while there are some progress, there's actually a lot more progress to be made. And that's one of the reasons for this panel today. We see organizations on the front line like Illumai Native working to change this issue. It's an initiative that they've created and it's led by natives. It helps to ensure accurate and authentic portrayals of Native communities in pop culture and media. They have created a toolkit to help guide entertainment professionals on this critical issue, providing helpful verbiage, dispelling myths, providing insights and steps for positive actions, because the truth is we need a path. People need a path so that they can be different and they can really deal with topics in a real way. So I'm happy today to introduce today's guest moderator. We have with us DeLanna Studi, who is a Cherokee descent. She was the first national Broadway tour of August Osage County, the New York Times Critics Pick Consent, and spent 2 seasons at the Oregon Shakespeare Festival. Her film and television credits include Edge of America, The Only Good Indian, Bless, General Hospital, Z Nation, Shameless, and Goliath. Very, very full career. Her play, And So We Walked, based on retracing her family's footsteps along the Trail of Tears with her father, was recently produced at Triad Stage and Portland Center Stage, and she recently performed in Gloria, A Life at the Darrell Roth Theater. She is the artistic director of Native Voices at the Autry Museum and the chair of SAG-AFTRA's National Native Americans Committee. DeLanna, we are so happy to have you with us. Thank you. And without further ado, please take it away.
Thank you, Gabrielle. Nice to meet you, Errol. Welcome, everyone. I'm DeLanna Studi. I'm a proud citizen of the Cherokee Nation, and I'm speaking to you from the mighty Cherokee Nation, formerly known as Eastern Oklahoma. Because of this country's complicated history, where we are in Oklahoma is not our original homelands. So the Cherokee Nation resides on what was the original homelands of the Queypo, the Kickapoo, the Oceti-Sakowee, and the Osage. I would also like to acknowledge that we're using Zoom. The platform that we're using today is headquartered in what is now called San Jose, California, on the traditional lands of the Ohlone and the Tamian peoples. And as our friends at Groundwater Arts reminds us, the work we create together on a digital platform does not exist in the ether, in an imaginary void, but is made possible because of the physical land and the indigenous people who steward it. So Wadot, the Ohlone, and the Tamian people. I'd also like to take this moment to acknowledge that the SAG-AFTRA offices reside on what are the lands of the Gabrielino Tongva and their neighbors, the Tataviam. I always like to point this out because we are still here, and it's always nice to know who was here first, whose land you're on, and the fact that they are still thriving and surviving. Today's panel is about the legacy and the future of Native American storytellers, and we're very lucky to have the following people on this panel. We have Glenn Stanton. Glenn, can you give us a wave? Glenn Stanton has worked in stage and film and television. He's best known for his recurring role on Chicago Fire and Days of Our Lives. He's most recently seen on AMC's The Sun and Fox's hit show 911. Let's welcome Glenn Stanton. Then we have a native Oklahoma, Kimberly Guerrero. Kimberly. She's notably portrayed Jerry Seinfeld's Native American girlfriend on Seinfeld, and originated the role of Jonna in the Tony Award-winning August Osage County. She has played Chief Wilma Mankiller in 2 independent films, The Cherokee Word for Water and the Gloria Steinem biopic, The Glorias. She is a screenwriter too, and a co-founder of the indigenous production team, the Style Horse Collective, and was just named the new artistic director of UC Riverside. Here is Kimberly Guerrero. We also have Kalani Queypo, actor and filmmaker. Kalani, give us a wave. He's a longtime member of the SAG-AFTRA's National Native Americans Committee and serves on the Advisory Council for Native Voices Theater at the Autry. His credits include The New World, Jamestown, Fear the Walking Dead, and he is now seen in upcoming CW series Trickster. So here is Kalani Queypo. We also have Amber Midthunder. Hi, Amber. Amber has been working in film and television since she was very young. She was seen in Oscar-nominated Hell or High Water and best known for her role in the Marvel series Legion. She can currently be seen on CW's Roswell, New Mexico, and will be starring in The Ice Road. Let's welcome Amber Midthunder. Hi, Amber. And we have a casting director, Renee Haynes. Renee is an Ardios winner and a 3-time Emmy nominee for the TNT miniseries Into the West, the HBO feature Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee, and the Netflix series Godless. She is recognized in the entertainment industry as one of the foremost experts in Native American and First Nations casting. She is known for her casting in the popular Twilight series, the TV series Yellowstone and Jamestown, and is currently working on CW's Trickster. Here is Renee Haynes. So I'd like to take this moment to welcome everyone. As you can see, we have some amazing panelists, and we're just going to jump right into the discussion. So few people know that Native Americans have been represented on screen since almost the inception of film in America. Representation of natives has often been stereotypical, with less than 1% of native characters included. So I guess my question for all the panelists, just to start it out, is what or who inspired you to get into your field, and what encourages you to stick it out?
This is going to be really spiritual. Mikey on the cereal commercials. I'm like, shoot, if that kid can do it, I can do it. Sorry, very true. On a very spiritual level for me, it was for the legacy. I literally started tearing up the second Pamela started talking. When she said legacy and future, and I saw Amber, and I saw Kalani, and I saw DeLanna, and I saw Glenn, I'm just already weeping. But Tantu Cardinal, Sheila Tausey were the folks that I looked up to, Graham Greene, Gary Farmer, also Chief Dan George, and of course, I don't think I would be here without Will Sampson. And Tim, his son, was like a brother to me. And I feel like Will blessed me through Tim. And so in some ways, I think we're all here because of Will Sampson.
I think I'll add to that, you know, growing up, just like what Kim was saying, is that you see people on TV, and the majority of the time they didn't look like you know, and they didn't have the experience that you had. And you wanted to see yourself in them, and you wanted to see yourself on screen. And so you started looking, and anytime there would be somebody who popped up on screen, and it would be super exciting and electric, because you thought, my goodness, they look like my uncle, they look like my mom, my cousin, they look like me. And I think that was the biggest thing, is that I think when we're really young, and we're innocent, and we haven't been told what we can't do yet, it all seems like a possibility. And then as you start to grow up, you think, oh, maybe this isn't a possibility, you know. And recently I said that, you know, that the one thing that's worse than being misrepresented is to be invisible, you know. And there's nothing more tragic than feeling like you don't belong in the country that your ancestors originally walked upon. It hurts, you know. So I think for me, it was reaching for these people that felt like family and felt like you, and knowing that because it was a possibility for them, it could be a possibility for you.
I'll add to that.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I feel like there's a really foundational thing that, you know, the Native community has, where you get to grow up, and you know, as you participate in this thing, you also get to connect to your legends in a way that I think other people don't. You know, like, I agree, like Tantu Cardinal, I mean, Wes Studi, like Buffy St. Marie is a huge inspiration for me. And it's, you know, like, you get to go to these places, walk these lands, meet these people who it's their family, it's their thing. And there is, as scary as it can be to not see yourself, when you do reach that, and you do get to connect to the family and the places and the people of these things that really inspired you, there's a huge force in that you have, that, you know, is that connecting to that, you know, it's possible.
And, you know, I'll say my getting into this was really sort of accidental, because I went to college to play football, and I fell into this essentially. And I mean, I was always artistically involved, but it wasn't like I was going in like, this is what I want to do with my life. I had a whole realistic plan to make the NFL, was, you know, how I went into it. But I fell into this. And when I started in, I was really doing it for myself, because my family is removed from culture, and I'm mixed. And so it's like not being enrolled in the tribe and not being involved in the culture as a child. There's a void anyways. Like, there's this emptiness that you feel, and this disconnection that you carry. And as everybody knows, this business is rough. And I know for me, one of the things that's kept me going is being blessed to have the arts reconnect me to culture that my family had not participated in, and fill that void. And there is something about being a part of this, and being a part of the culture, where suddenly your career is not your career, and you feel like you are representing something that is so much more than you and so much bigger than you. And like when the weight really crashes on you, and you're like, why am I doing this, and what is the purpose? Like we all have at some point. There is that to lean onto. There is this really strong, rich community that will lift you up, and you feel your ancestors, you feel things, because these are stories that have been neglected. And then suddenly you have the opportunity to be a part of that, to give them breath and give them life, and be a part of something that is so much bigger than you. And I think that's the only way that you can really survive this career intact, emotionally, spiritually, mentally, is leaning into that tribal feeling of, I am just a piece of a much bigger picture, and it goes so much more beyond me, far before I was here and long after I am gone and forgotten. This is the thing we have to carry. So I know that's one of the things that really helps keep my head above water when everything kind of rushes in. So
Thank you, Glenn. Renee, you've been very active in making sure you're amplifying Native voices and actually casting Native people from community. You actually go out of your way to visit our reservations and our Indian communities. Can you talk about what inspired you to get into your field as a casting director and to do those things?
Sure. I will say that from the time I was young, and saw my first movie, I said, oh, I want to be the person that picks the people to be in the movies. I told my mother that when I was 7. Little did I know, I'm not the one that gets to pick the people, but I get to bring them all together so those choices can be made. One of the very first projects that I ever worked on as a casting professional was a project set on the Blackfeet Reservation in Browning, Montana. And it was about 2 weeks before we were going to actually start shooting. And the community members put me through a little test. And it's much too long a story to tell, but needless to say, I came away from this little test with so much regard and affection for the community, particularly about how they watched out for each other. They wanted to make sure that I, as the representative for Hollywood, was treating each individual, no matter if they were down on their luck, or if they were an elder, or if they were a child, or if they were a tribal council member. They wanted to see that I was treating each one of them with the same regard that I would treat anyone else. And I was so profoundly moved and affected by this sense of community, that it has, that being my first job, I think I was so fortunate, because it has colored the way I do my job from day one until today. And it's, it's through that affection for the community that I have just been able to sustain and continue this work.
Thank you, Renee. Now, diversity has been a very big topic these past years. Is that increasing opportunities for Native stories and acting opportunities, do you think? Absolutely. And are there differences in the 3 platforms? Go on, Renee, I'm so sorry.
I absolutely think that diversity has opened some doors. And we're seeing, I can't tell you everything that's happening, but for my projects, I can say that I'm having a harder time, like if X, Y, and Z is who my producers want, and suddenly they're not available because they have 3 other offers on what's wonderful contemporary television shows, it's amazing, and we still have a long way to go, but I do believe that diversity is helping to open doors.
And Kimberly and Kalani, I know that you've been in Hollywood longer than some people, about as long as I have. Have you seen it change?
Oh, it's changed. Oh yeah, I remember the diversity movements of the 90s, and I'm very grateful for them, and the aughts. But there was I'm just going to be very honest. Most of us are actors here. There was a lot of lip service, and I saw, dang it, look at, I thought this was because I was going to get shiny, I needed to blot, and instead it's because I'm balling. We would go in and I would see friends of mine, which are like family, as you can tell, we're all like family. And I was remiss by saying, DeLanna, your Uncle Wes is such an inspiration to us as well, and hung out with my parents in Tahlequah. But I would see my friends who weren't getting maybe the roles that I was getting, you were getting, Irene Bedard was getting, Kelani was getting. I would see my friends go into these diversity initiatives so fired up with so much hope. And then they would leave and go, I really think they like me. I really think, there's going to be a shot. They're talking about maybe putting, and then they would never get the call, never get the call. And it just broke me. It broke me to the point that back in 2015, when everything dried up. Like the late aughts really all the aughts in the early teens, so 2010 through 2017-ish. Well, till Standing Rock, let's be honest, until we could finally say, no, people do care about natives, because millions of people are watching them in live time fight for their water and fight for their land. So, but that's why I went back to get a screenwriting degree. I'm like, shoot, I'm just going to put my time into writing roles for Native people. And I'm not the only one. I'm not the only actor out there writing, for people that they love. But in the past week alone, this is between knowing we were going to do this panel and today, I'm up here in Montana doing a film, like you were talking about, Renee. I've never worked so much in my life. And I'm not a big social media person, but there's nothing to do in the hotel room when I'm not shooting. So I'm just sitting there, and all of our friends and our family are just like, booked it. And you're just like, yes. And some of these people I don't even know yet. And I'm just already like, yes, go. And some of them I do, we've worked with in Native Voices, DeLanna, we're the artistic director. And so I love seeing, our team that really works a lot working. And then all, like you just said, Renee, the third, fourth, fifth, and people, we got millions of them. What did we say? 572 recognized tribes and 245 unrecognized tribes. There's so many wonderful Indigenous storytellers out there. And it's just that I feel like the floodgates are opening, and it's a good time.
I agree. There was a lot of lip service, and maybe that sounds rude, but I think there were a lot of dashed hopes, and what the interesting thing is that it really created a reaction from a lot of actors. I think, Kimberly was saying that, personally for me, I resisted. I was like, I don't want to write. I feel like, who am I to write something? Like, my dream is to be an actor, and let the people who like live, breathe, and dream about writing, let them do that, because they're better than I could possibly be. But meanwhile, there I was at Native Voices Theater at the Autry, and I was surrounded by Native actors who were in Hollywood, and found myself in a youth mentoring program where we were teaching Native kids ages 8 through their late teens how to craft a one-act play. And they got to have these actors like, and at that point, it's like, okay, I had a feature film and then a few guest stars, but that was exciting for them, and I realized, oh my goodness, like, this is creating something really different. It's creating this possibility that they're seeing Native people on a professional level, working with a dramaturg, working with professional actors, and having their words spoken. And, you know, within that realm, I remember looking out at all these kids and thinking they're all watching, and we're all making this a part of their everyday experience, you know, and you know, they would have their families invited at the end, and they would, and you know, this became this huge part of their reality, and it wasn't just a dream. And then you go on further in your career, and I've been lucky because I've gotten to work. But again, I realized every time I found myself on set, I almost became an ambassador of sorts, because I thought it was all my people who were watching me, but it was the rest of the world who were watching me, not on the screen, but on set. And they were judging indigenous people based on their experience with me, because maybe I was in Budapest and I was the first indigenous person from this continent that they've ever met. And so then I took that on to myself, because when they expanded, you know, with more language and more native content, I would sort of give a pep talk, you know, and I would gather all these First Nations people that were flown out to play villagers. A lot of them had never been on set before, and I would I would remind them, hey, listen, for a lot of these crew people, I was the first indigenous person they'd ever met. And know that they're watching. Know that they doubled down on language this season because of their positive experience that we had last season. And then the next year was the same thing. So I think that people are always watching. And I think the diversity is there's an appetite that people never realized that they had. There's a demographic that they forgot about, you know, and here we are. So I think that things are definitely a lot more exciting, like Kim was saying, and you know, going through my social media feed, and I'm just like, yes, you know, because it hurts when you look at your community and you're like, these are all talented actors and they should have the experience that I've gotten to taste. You know, they should have that experience because it builds your confidence, and it builds your realm of possibilities. Like, absolutely, I belong here, so that you can walk onto set and say, watch what I'm going to do, you know? So I think that we are really at a great spot, because it's not this pendulum that has swung and then it's like, okay, now it's swung the other way. And now we got to wait another 5 years until it becomes a little chic and a little bit trendy to have native content. Now we're looking at native people creating native content and people representing in a strong way. So I think it's a very exciting time. And I agree, like with what Renee was saying, is that we still have a long way to go, but my goodness, we're in the game now. You know, we're not just sitting on the bleachers saying, man, I wish I was on that court. We are on the field. We are making goals. We are like sinking shots, and we count. We matter. So I get riled up. I get really emotional too, because it's a really fabulous time. So I'm super optimistic.
Yep, thank you both. That's because I remember when I first came to Los Angeles, a lot of the roles I was auditioning for were leather and feathers. It was all very period pieces, and it was very difficult to see a contemporary Native role that's out there. And I guess this leads me to my next question, and this is for everyone, including you, Renee. Out of the roles that you've been cast in, or the roles that you've cast, is there one role that you felt was very innovative and that broke from representation as you've seen it before?
I'll go first, I guess. There's been so many, but one of the ones that I'm particularly proud of was one of the first things I cast, which was a TNT film called Lakota Woman. It was Irene Bedard in the lead. I think it was her first big role, and this was in the early 90s, I'd say 91. She carried that film, and she received a Golden Globe nomination for that film. And I thought that, I mean, that was remarkable in its time. And I thought that that was something that was going to propel us forward. And it did to a degree, but then, you know, it stalled. But what it did was, it was one of the first portrayals of a a Native woman carrying a film and being remarkable. So that's one that I'm proud of every single project and every single person that we cast every time, but that one stands out in my mind as something very significant.
I think for me, it's not as much how incredibly different or innovative the role was, but I did an episode of Amber's show, actually, Roswell, and the thing that was so great about that is that there was a Native writer right there listed on the cover, and and I think the great thing about that, and seeing more of that now, is when you go onto set, especially as a Native actor, so often you don't get to have the same experience as most actors. Most actors show up and they're just simply actors. But so often when we show up, we are not only actors, but we suddenly, unbeknownst to us, we knew it was coming, but it wasn't in the contract. We are now the cultural consultant. And then you have to walk this balancing act of, okay, well, this director is saying, okay, well, would they do this? And like, I don't know. This is we're playing Seminoles. I'm Cherokee. The cultures are so different. And then if they ask you to do something that isn't actual culture, then you're stuck in this limbo of like, okay, do I value my job security or my soul more at this moment? And that's so much pressure. And so when you have Native writers, you have Native show writers, or showrunners, you have Native directors, that there is a buffer between you and that there is somebody else higher up than you that is fighting for that cultural truth, fighting for that balance, and you don't have to feel that pressure and that weight of like balancing out your job security and like the weight of your soul and the generations and ancestors that came before you and what you're representing. Again, it's like so much pressure. So getting that alleviated and simply just knowing that you don't have to be all of that and you get to just show up and be an actor. You just get to show up and you get to throw your guts into this script and into these words that have been crafted and bring life to it. That's, to me, that's one of the most exciting things that's happening right now. Is it's not just about representation on the screen, but it's the people that are telling the stories, because that's how we get real authentic. It's not just look at these brown people we have, look at these natives we have. And it's not that. It is, what is the truth behind the words? What is the truth behind the intent? And I think natives telling native stories is the only way that you can really get that and alleviate that sort of pressure and tension and release that responsibility where it should be.
Well, I mean, I have to big up Amber here. I mean, you and Legion, Amber. I mean, I'm just like, oh my God, oh my gosh. Talk
that's the one I was gonna say. Yeah, I mean, I feel like I personally feel like I've been very fortunate. My like thing for myself is I'm a native Navy SEAL. I'm a native Navy SEAL. As like an actor, like I feel like the goal is to like appropriately and accurately represent like our history and our culture and like who we are, and like show what Native life and what Native culture is like on screen, and also show what we are just as people, because like we also just like, we walk around, we go to the grocery store, we're doctors, we're this thing, we're that thing, we're actors, we're all sorts of, regular things. Also, we have this like really cool history and this really powerful part that not everybody has, and that's important, and that needs to be seen and explained, because it is very underrepresented, and it's there's a huge undereducation of that. But also I think it's really important, just to show like the other stuff too. And so, I really feel like my role in Legion was great, because we, there was an origin story, and we talked about, they came from a native, my character and Bill Irwin's characters that were kind of like the same. And we talked about like, they came from a native family, and one was white and one was native, and like what happened there. And then the rest of the story was about like, it was never ignored, but it was also really just, it was about her as an individual, it was about the relationship that the two of them had, and showing kind of that like I'm a Native person, I'm a Native actor, I'm an enrolled tribal member. I have this, you know, I go to ceremonies like this is my life, this is who I am. And also, you know, I can play a character and she's got 100,000 different things for me, and she's also a fully developed person, and we share these things and we're different. So that was really, I feel like, a story that I felt fortunate to portray, and she was really cool.
Mm-hmm.
Like she like fought and did fun stuff, and it was like, it was also really cool to be able to be like a powerful person, you know, and show like my thing is always, I imagine like kids, you know, kids and like Native kids anywhere watching, and like if you're on the res, you're not on the res, and thinking like, looking like we were talking about, like who are the people that look like me, who are the people that I can maybe feel connected to. And it breaks my heart to think about that there are people who, that they sometimes don't have that, and especially like in the superhero world or in any world, to be able to have somebody that they can look to and feel good about and feel like, man, if it's only one, like that's my one and I'm proud, that I got to do that, feels really like that hit it right off the bat for me.
If I may add to this, you know, so there's a show that's going to be coming out on CW in January that Renee Haynes cast, Trickster, and this experience, let me tell you, I've never had this experience in my entire career. First, I'll say I worked with a Seneca artist years ago, and she brought me along. She was directing this stage production that I was doing. She brought me along to an interview, and so there I was honored. I was like, wow, she brought me along, and I listened a lot. The journalist asked her, okay, you're doing this project, and you know it's Native director, Native choreographer, you know, Native cast, you know, Native composer. So do you find that it's easier because you're working with a lot of with all Native people, and without a beat, she came back and she says, no, it's a lot quicker because it's a lot less explaining to do. And so I always have carried that with me, you know, because, you know, we think about the hardships and everything, but really that's what it is. It's like there are so many things that are unspoken when you work with fellow artists. So culturally speaking, when you work together in an environment. So there I am on the set of Trickster, and we've got, you know, it's based on a trilogy of books from an Indigenous writer. We've got, you know, primarily Indigenous cast, Indigenous showrunner and director who's female on top of that. Every single department throughout the entire thing, because of what she really pushed for, had at least 2 Indigenous people in every single department. So imagine what that would feel like. It was like utopia for me. You know, you walk on set and it's like every single department, everybody touching you and being a part of you when you're acting behind the camera, in front of the camera, all Indigenous people. And it was like going to a family reunion every day. So, and there I was, and I remember that came back to me about what Sadie Buck had said. It's just a lot quicker. There was less explaining to do, and there's an understanding, and we got to amplify all of the nuances that happen within our communities. And we were telling this story that is so rich. So I'm so excited for people to see this. I think that it's groundbreaking because it's contemporary. You know, especially like with my career, I've successfully been able to navigate the period piece world and try to bring what I could bring to it, and here we are in this environment where this also becomes a possibility. And I hear of all of these other projects that are happening and that are being developed. I think it's a very exciting time, and I think that when people see this, like the decision makers, or when they measure it by viewers or money made or whatever, this will be a success story, and it'll create this opportunity of thinking, oh, right, they're not just stuck in the past, and we don't just see them in that environment anymore. We actually see them today.
Yeah. You know, I think there's, in my language, I was, last time I was up on the res in Washington, I was asking my uncle and his best friend is a fairly fluent speaker. And I was asking Ernie, I said, what is there like a word for our kind of worldview? And he goes, let me get back to you on that. And then he came back and he said, yeah, he said, it's school. And I said, what is sku'ul? And he said, it's like the smoke spiraling up through the teepee hole. And so that's what I've experienced. It's in science, it's in nature, it's that Fibonacci sequence of the spiral or of the Milky Way or of our inner ear or the Nautilus shell. But, you know, when I first started out, when Renee gave me my first job back in 1991, and I had no idea what I was doing. And so thank goodness I walked into a friendly room with Renee. But it was a time when we were hot. Dances with Wolves had come out and we were hot. And DeLanna, your Uncle Wes was just, you know, it was an exciting time, just like today is. And so within 3 weeks, I was on Northern Exposure talking about Russian denuclearization post-Soviet Union after the fall. And I remember it was with Graham Greene, a First Nations actor from Canada. And we were sitting there like, how exciting is this that we're going to talk about, you know, denuclearization in Russia as Native people. And, you know, of course, Northern Exposures takes place way out with their Alaska Natives, and which was great. And then I literally got on a plane, came back to Los Angeles and went straight to CBS Studios to shoot Seinfeld. So, and the whole premise of Winona was that Jerry didn't even know she was Native American. You know, after the cigar store Indian, he asked Elaine, Winona is Native American? And she's like, yeah, you know, so it was to get to go to do those things and think we're going to keep going. And comedy is my joy. So 28 years later, watching all these great sitcoms go by, I'm like, can anybody fit me in anywhere? But we finally have our own Native American sitcom, Native American showrunner, Native American directors, Native American writing room. And it is lights out, the funniest thing I have ever seen in my life. So what was it, 3 weeks ago, I was working with Michael Gray Eyes and we were reminiscing over our 28-year-long career together. And it was the first time neither one of us had to die. It was so exciting. I'm like, what? And we both got to wear jeans. What? This is so exciting. And it was so much fun because Sydney Freeland, our fantastic writer, director, producer was directing, and we had just worked together on a show in New Zealand. And so we already had that shorthand. And then the showrunner, Sarah, was coming up and she was giving me notes. And it was just like, it was exactly what you just said, Kelani. It was just the joy of like, we finally get to come out and just like tee it up, knock it out, shoot that 3-pointer. So there's so much exciting thing. There's so many exciting projects going on right now. And that, I believe it's just the beginning. So it's that school, but this time the circle is higher and it's bigger and it's encompassing more of us. And it makes me so happy.
And I'm noticing, I think the circle's higher and the circle's bigger because we do have Native showrunners now. We have Native writers, Native directors. We're getting Natives in every single room. And they're able to bring this authenticity that non-Natives can't bring. So what do you do? What do you tell filmmakers and other writers who are non-Native, who are wanting to approach that authenticity? What advice would you give them?
I'll go. Whenever I take on a project, oftentimes it's that educational issue of, you know, we always start at point zero and work towards it. But my advice has always been to engage a cultural consultant, regardless of whether it's a historical piece or a contemporary piece. Engage someone who can help you find the real answers to the questions that everyone will have.
I think as well, it's one of those things where there is always a moment whenever you're telling, and this goes for anybody telling a story about people that they are not, a man writing a story that is these scenes with mostly women, things like that. If you are non-Native trying to incorporate Native stories, I think, like Renee was saying, you have to have a consultant, you have to have somebody, but I think the biggest thing to do is no matter how exhaustive and responsible you research and you try to do the work and everything, when you sit down with a consultant, you have to check your defensive mechanisms and your ego at the door, and you have to just listen, because no matter how exhaustively you research and everything, you're still coming at it like walking through a zoo, right? You're reading the placards, you're seeing them behind the glass, but you have no idea what it is to be that individual. And so I think you have to allow that person to just talk, and don't try to defend it. Just let them talk so you can try to understand why, because that's the biggest question, is why. Why are you writing this story? Is it because it's cool and it's your way in? Because that's not the right approach. The why is just as important as the story itself. And so I think if you are able to disarm your defensive mechanisms, to disarm your ego, and just listen, and just allow an individual to be honest about their experience and honest about their life and their fears, their insecurities, and what makes them defensive, then you're able to really tell the story far more responsibly and far more fully than you would otherwise.
When people come to me now, or if I have, and sometimes I just take the opportunity anyway, as I've done in the past throughout my career, now it's like, bring a Native person above the line. Just find somebody, find a producer, find a writer, find a director, decolonize this shit, excuse my language, decolonize this, like if you're going to tell our stories, bring somebody that knows it, and that can write it, or has that creative, and to Renee and Glenn's point, and the consultant, somebody that deeply knows the history and the creative, component, so that, again, there's that shorthand of really having agency and sovereignty over our own stories.
I agree. I feel like it's not being afraid to collaborate, because even like Glenn was saying, when you're like, there are times when you're the only Native actor in a world of you're telling the story, and you're the only, not just the only Native actor, you're the only Native person. You kind of step into that naturally, because it's hard not to, like there's not really, like, as a people, we're not really like, we don't divide a whole lot, like kind of, we carry everything with us all the time. So I feel like if you're in that position and you're wanting accuracy, or you're wanting to be respectful, which you should, it's listening to the people that you're working with who might actually know if they're, hopefully you would have like an actual cultural advisor, but even if you don't, I think it's a posture of who you are. I think it's being curious. I think that, and ideally that's where we're going as a human race, is like being curious about each other genuinely, and then incorporating these things that we learn. So whether it's onset or offset, having the posture and the mindset of wanting to know who you are, who your people are, how you got here, what made you this way. And I think that just makes everybody richer in everything that they do.
I'll say this too, is that you have to bring full energy to everything, because it's like what Glenn was saying earlier about feeling like it's exhaustive. It's an interesting thing, like with recently, like there's been a lot of like, it's like, I'm tired and I'm angry, and I don't want to be the person to educate you on the history. And so don't come to me. And, the thing is that I always just try to tell myself, Kalani, how can you be the bridge? How can you be the positive energy? How can you be the open door? Because you can't slap down someone for not knowing what, knowing better, and then not being willing to help them to become better. So I think, like, from the Native experience, I always just say, Kalani, take the extra energy, because this is an opportunity. And so I always tell people, like, I don't have all the answers, and I don't always have all of the energy that's needed, but I can point you towards, and so being able to identify resources that they can tap into. There is an app, ladies and gentlemen, that you can figure out land acknowledgements. There is an app. Handle it. Download it. Make it happen. So there are a lot of people who don't know that. Get involved with the conversations. I wrote a song for my musical, and it's say yes, say yes, say yes. you know, even when you think you're not ready and your world is unsteady, right? So you have to say yes to everything. The moment that you say no to something, ask yourself why you're saying no to it, right? Is it because it's inconvenient? You know, or is it because it at the core compromises you and everything that you believe in? Because yes, you have to say no to some things, but for opportunities that are not convenient, say yes to everything. We all said yes to be a part of this conversation today, and we make a difference because people are going to listen and say, oh gosh, I never thought about it in that way. I never saw it from this perspective. And we change minds, we change hearts. So I always say yes, find the things that bring you joy. And sometimes it's not the immediate gratification, right? You can't say, well, this is going to make me feel good in the moment. Sometimes you know that this is going to contribute to that bigger picture and that bigger narrative that you're changing or creating. So I say, try to find all the things that you can say yes to. And guess what, y'all? At the end of the day, I'm exhausted. And I think to myself, I lay down on my bed and I think, it feels good to be spent. I want to know that I spent this energy and that tomorrow I'm going to wake up and say, all right, let's take on the new day, you know, and you make it happen. So thank you all like for saying yes today, because we're having this incredible conversation that is moving to me. It's like, I'm just trying to hold it together because I'm just like bursting at the seams. So thank you.
Thank you all. And I have to say, just having this conversation with all of you gives me hope. It inspires me. Hearing your success stories makes me feel like I can go out and succeed. And I feel our community needs that. We need to see that. We need to celebrate and promote and support each other. And so when we get together like this, we're doing that for each other. We're also showing the world at large that Native talent is out there. There's no longer an excuse saying, I can't find the talent. I don't know where to look. And the truth is, we have people like Renee Haynes who goes out into community. She's never used that as an excuse once. And if she can do it, we all can do it. And so I know we're getting close to time. I have a few more questions. I actually have tons of more questions. I wish we could chat all day, but alas, we cannot. I think my next question is in regards to the future, right? We've seen where we come from, and we see where we're going, and we see where we are now. But how are you using the platform that you are now afforded with all of your success, and you all have different varieties of platforms, how are you using that to create change for the future?
I'll go. For us, we have actively for many years now, when we reach out, when we go into the communities and when we reach out to the communities, we've created tools for aspiring actors to send us back the best audition possible so that it's competitive on a professional level. And I could not be more proud of just the Native community in general. During this time of the pandemic, everybody has been forced to have to do self-tapes and Zoom auditions and stuff. And I feel that the community, and I mean, I'm talking about hundreds of people who we see regularly with different projects, their auditions are on par with any professional audition that you could pull up in Hollywood. And I'm so proud of all of them. But that's the one thing I want to say to everyone out there for the future is you have to work on that skill of auditioning and making your self-tape and getting your tape to whatever casting director or producer it is in a timely manner, because that is your calling card. And you may not get that job, but you will be remembered if you send in a good representation of yourself. Because trust me, every one of us who are professionals in the casting realm of this business are looking for those new faces, and we remember you. And we will reach out to you again in the future, but not if you don't send your tape, and not if your tape is not good. So that's, for us, that's what we have been trying to do. And I have seen it bloom and blossom into something wonderful during the pandemic.
May I add to that? So one of the things that I've always described Renee Haynes and her office is that they've been champions for Native actors. She's been way ahead of the game. Anybody who's ever auditioned for Renee, we're talking 6 years ago, she already had in place these notes on how to approach a self tape. We're talking 6 years ago, and I can confidently say that because I know I was doing self tapes before that with her, and they were much less common than they are now. And this is what I mean by championing. She All the things that I'm seeing casting directors that like offices that I haven't auditioned for before, or they're so because of the pandemic, they're all now giving these tips that Renee has been cultivating because she's been working in rural areas with people who don't have access to Hollywood. And so she's been grooming Native actors with the approach to the self-tape. And I will say, I mean, I don't even remember how many years ago that was that we took the business of acting, that acting panel, and we talked specifically about how to do a self-tape. And Renee Haynes, on her own dime, on her own time, came with us to New Mexico, and we presented that, and then we did it all. Ed Harris, I mean, amazing.
Can I say that the document for 10 basic steps to putting yourself on tape was written on the airplane on the way to Albuquerque for that panel, because I thought, oh, I need to talk about something. And out of that panel became the document that, like, I bet you hundreds of people who might be watching this show have actually received. And trust me, it works. We cast we find new faces for almost every project, and it's very exciting. And it just takes one good audition to send you on your way. So thank you for that, Kelani. But it really was, our document was born from that workshop, which was a SAG-AFTRA workshop.
Yes.
Mm.
This is so wonderful. We have a few more minutes left, about maybe 10 minutes, and we have some questions from the audience. And so one of the questions that we have is, if you are Native but aren't 100% positive what tribe your ancestors are from, does this sway your decision in regards to casting an actor who fits the role but doesn't have documented tribal association?
It's so tricky. It doesn't. I am almost only swayed by performance. You know, it's our job to show our creative team the best performances possible. But I do encourage anyone who knows in their heart and soul that they're Native, but they don't have the information to research and find it, and so that you can proudly declare who and what you are. I think that's important for your soul as a human being, not just for your acting career. Yeah, every project is different. I know that for myself, I'm not hired. If a production company wanted just any actor for every role, they wouldn't be hiring me. If they're hiring me, we know that they're looking for something very specific. But we are not permitted to discriminate against anyone, regardless of race or whatever. But this is why I always encourage all Native actors to declare who they are, what they are, be proud of it, and tell people going in the room. Put it on your resume, even if it's in the special skills. Let people know who and what you are, because it could be in your advantage to be Native, because in this time of diversity, you are what people are looking for. So don't hide that. But yeah, we are not permitted to ask you. No casting professional is supposed to ask an actor what their nationality is, what, you know, we're not allowed to ask those personal questions. So you need to come in the room proud and representing.
Thank you, Renee. Yeah, I always like to add on to this. Yes, if you are a member of a tribally enrolled, if you're a federally enrolled citizen, please put that on your resume. That way, the casting director they can ask you that question without any violating any legalities, right? Because we are hiring people for these parts. On the other hand, if you are not Native, please don't lie. To me, it's the same thing as your special skill saying that you can ride a horse when you can't. You will get found out, and then it's going to be terrible. And so, and of course, you know, think about the roles that are open to everyone else and the roles that are open to Native. So if you are not sure, I'm with Renee. Find the research. Don't claim to be something that you're not. Go look it up, find out for certain, and then proudly claim it. And be honest. I mean, honestly, I think a lot of the situations with Hollywood and a lot of the people that have been called out for not being Native, if they would have just been clear and said, I've grown up with stories of my ancestors and my grandparents being Native. I don't know for sure. I'm willing to find out and do the work. It would have been a lot simpler for them lying and saying that they were this tribe or that tribe. So that's just my cautionary tale for all of you. Kimberly, I see you unmuted.
Yeah, well, just, you know, there's several of us that, and this is such a heartbreaking part of our history, that were adopted out. So there are a lot of us lost birds out there. I'm one of those that were incredibly, incredibly blessed to reconnect with my Indigenous family when I was 20 years old. And, you know, I grew up probably 3 hours, you know, from where they all are in Tahlequah. But not everyone is that lucky. So for all of those of you that are out there that got put into foster care or grew up in orphanages or, you know, grew up in a foster family and you can't find those things, don't give up, keep pressing through and, you know, be a part of the community. I have so many dear friends, Indigenous friends who they don't know their story, but they are my family. They are our family, our Indigenous family. Just find your family. There are Native communities all over the country, and just go and your heart will recognize their heart and their hearts will recognize your heart. You know, when my mom was pregnant with me and she didn't know what to do, my uncle said, it's okay. Like you can, you know, have her and send her out because our people are like the salmon. They'll always find their way home. And that's why I'm here. And so just come home, folks, come home. And we'll be here with open arms.
It's beautiful, Kimberly. And it's so true. When I first moved to Los Angeles, the first piece of advice my father gave me was find the Native community and you'll find home. And you'll find that's who we are as a people. And so I just encourage you to do the research, come find us. We're here for you if you need us. We have 2 more questions. Hopefully we can get to the answers without running out of time. One is, I am an Indigenous actor. 90% of my auditions are for time periods from the 1500s to the 1800s. My concern is that I sound too modern and urban. Should I use my normal voice expecting to get vocal coaching if cast, or should I risk trying to sound like an Indian from the old days and possibly sounding odd?
I'll answer that just because I've done a lot of period pieces and languages and movement. I think that as an actor, aside from the cultural aspects, get out of the idea of what you sound like or what you look like. Those are death traps. It will kill your opportunities. It is not about what you sound like or what you look like. Think about the time period. So you'll get all the clues from the script. What time period is that? What interaction have they had with what peoples at that time? If it's pre-contact, post-contact, and really think about, not about like, oh, what does this one sound like? Because guess what? If you do research with film and television, most of the time, you're going to get bad examples of what people sounded like. Okay, because these are ideas of the decision makers who made those projects of what they thought Native people sounded like. So really look at the language, and that's going to inform You know, like when I did Jamestown, I had to really think about like, what is the Pamunkey language? What does that language sound like? So what do words sound like if they were to learn English? Where would they learn English from? And how much interaction would they have? And then you learn other stories about, oh, there were kids who were adopted in opposite cultures into the Jamestown colony. There were native kids that were in there and vice versa. So start to think about the work that you can do as a character actor, the way that you move. Put your feet in moccasins. Put your feet on the earth. How does that change the way you walk? It's different from when you're in sneakers. So really think about, where does it come from? And you'll start to explore and have fun. One of my favorite things was in studying acting from, just a regular acting class, was animal study. And think about how that informs the way that you move. So get out of the idea of what you think it sounds like and get into why do people speak a certain way? What's their language? Where do they move? What are the things that they're dealing with? What do they look like if they're hunting for their food and gathering? It's different from ordering at McDonald's.
Can I add quickly to this? Also, just find the truth and the heart of what the little bit of script that you've gotten is. Keep it simple and deliver it. And don't think too much about why you're not right, because that will spill into your audition. Think about why you are right for that part and send your tape. If you hamper yourself, you will never proceed with the opportunity.
This is adding to, because what Kelani and Renee just said is foundational. Now we're living in the time of COVID when we have opportunities like this to get together. Try studying Alexander technique or any acting technique that neutralizes you. And then also, I know it can be expensive, but you never know. SAG-AFTRA has so many wonderful educational videos, but find a neutral accent. I grew up talking like this, y'all. I do not talk like the way I've been talking. Like, I'm from Southeastern Oklahoma, okay? And Renee, I think it was on Geronimo that we had our language consultant. So what she did was pull, because I hadn't lost my A yet, and I say I too. I grew up in Idabel, Oklahoma. And so I didn't have a diphthong. I didn't know what a diphthong was. But she neutralized my language. And then that I carried that through the rest of my career. And thank goodness, it was free. It was on the set there of TNT's Geronimo. But, this is a craft. This is a Screen Actors Guild and AFTRA. And so this is what we do. We love our craft. And Amber, you're just saying that, how do we collaborate? So we're so good at that and genius at that, adapting. So take those forms of acting training and take what works for you and really get into that neutral place, and then do exactly what Renee and Kelani said. Get out there, be that. The truth is in you, and find that truth and live that truth in that neutral place.
Also ask, like Renee keeps talking about, we keep talking about friendly rooms and stuff like that. Like, people are there to help you, like if you have an audition, if like we've all been in for Renee so many times. My mom also works in casting. I grew up in a casting office. Like, those people, as scary as it can be, are there to help you. So don't ask your questions, because they do. Imagine that everybody who's watching you wants you to succeed, and then act with it.
You must succeed, because we can't look good unless you do. So know that my casting colleagues all want you to do extremely well. So if you have an email to anyone, write them and ask them that very specific question. Should I neutralize my accent? Should I wear my hair down or back? Whatever works. We're here to help you.
I just have to say, this was a fabulous, fabulous panel. I have been sitting here just taking notes and listening. And I want to say thank you to everybody, and to DeLanna, beautiful, your moderation. Thank you. But as guests also, I think these are the takeaways for me. And I hope that people see is acting, right? And truth is truth, and you have to own it. And it's not, when it comes down to it, that is the purest form, and we want to be able to be seen for our work. And so I think this has been an incredible panel, what you've shared in your stories. This will be ongoing in so many different ways. And I thank you for that. Renee, I want to say to this in front of everybody, how beautiful that you've created tools for actors so they can be, and for people who are new to it, who are just wanting to come into it, where they can be successful. I mean, that is really a gift. And I really hear that when Kalani's saying you did that, over 6 years ago, and how you have done that it's just, from all the performers out there who want to be the best they can be, we thank you for that, because it's hard enough just to go out and tell the story, hoping that you're doing the best you can. So thank you for that. And thank you for everybody who's been here with us today. I really do think this was a wonderful panel. It'll be something that, of course, will be, available for people to look at. I want, for those of you who have not yet, please subscribe to SAG-AFTRA's YouTube channel so you can get updates on the content that we're posting. Of course, you'll be able to see this later. I want to thank everybody for being a part of the President's Task Force on Education Outreach and Engagement. These live streams are important. Rebecca, thank you very much for being with us. And to everybody, please continue following. We learn together, we grow together, and we become better together. So take care, have a beautiful holiday, and thank you. Really wonderful panel. Good work.
Thank you. Bye.